He's a grinder. Very loyal. He's trying to take time off, and damn it, I'm not going to let him do it.
Hey, no, look, I'm glad we got Sam today because Texas Monthly just released the top 50 barbecue joints, and Sam and I need to do a 365 Sports athletic collab that somehow ties college football into all of this. So I'm just saying, you tell your bosses, I'll tell ours, that you and I are going to, we're going to hit all 50 or something. I don't know. We'll get a bus. I'm not sure how it's going to work, but we'll work at the details later. If all they have to do is tell us yes and give us money.
Leave it to Paul to discuss the most important story of the day. Yeah, I actually, you guys have Max Olson on. I texted him yesterday, hey, just know tomorrow the list is coming out. And of course, the first text I got from anybody today was from Max with a link to the top 50 list. Shout out to Brisket and Rice, which is 3 miles from my house, which made the list. I knew it was going to because it has been drawing crowds here recently, and they're actually moving a few miles away, but not too far from my house. But that was dangerous having a top 50 barbecue joint, almost not quite walking distance, but not much further than walking distance from my house.
All right, so you're coming off corporate meetings with the Athletic, obviously up in New York, and you and I text last night, and I said, did you see some of Sankey's responses or whatever? And this is part of a turf war. What was your take on what some of the quotes or what you heard him say?
Can I cuss on the show?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
It was a crock of shit is what it is. I honestly, look, some of what Greg says is right in that he was waxing poetic about how they wanted to move fast with the 12 team and then it got delayed. That's true. I do feel like some of this is pettiness from the whole alliance rebuff that happened after they tried to ram the 12 team through in 2021. And then the realignment happened with Texas and OU. And then everybody had to put a pause on it. I thought that was not a smart move. I thought we should have just went ahead and did it. And then of course we ended up in the same result more than a year later anyway. So to me, it feels like there's still some resentment for other conferences from that. And you could tell that tone from his voice ever since the years passed. Well, we were on board and doing it. We didn't have to do this, but we decided to get on board and then everybody stalled. It's he's not wrong about that, but it's still very petty to hear 4 years later still be complaining about it. And what I don't like is the condescending nature of which he says, I don't need to be lectured by the good of the game. Clearly you do, because you are trying to stack the deck for your conference. And I'm not saying that you're wrong in that because that's your role as a commissioner. You're trying to do the best that you can for your conference, but don't act like what's best for your conference is congruent with what's best for everybody, because it's not. What's best for everybody is inclusion. And so to me, if you go to 16, there's only two formats that make sense. It's either give every conference, and I don't mean just power conferences, I mean every FBS conference, a bid and make the rest at large, or just go 1 through 16 with no automatic qualifiers. To me, that's the only two formats that make sense. Anything that guarantees multiple bids for a conference is dead on arrival, in my opinion, as far as fan interest goes, because the more you gamify 4 SEC teams or 4 Big Ten teams, it ultimately means, yes, you're going to include the best teams, but you're also going to exclude some really good ones in other conferences because of it.
Sam, the commission went out the window, or at least temporarily last week, when they heard Cody Campbell was like, hey, look, I know you think that I'm, kind of this big money dude who only thinks about that, but he was talking about equal distribution money-wise of TV rights and all of that. And this is a dude who has the president's ear, who has a lot of politicians' ears, because he's donated a lot of money to politicians. Do you think that sent a genuine scare through the Big Ten and SEC of oh, this guy has influence that we also have, and they didn't have that before?
Founded in 1910, Samsonite is the world leader in durable, high-quality luggage and travel accessories. Made to the highest standards, our products won't let you down. We give you the confidence to get out there and explore. Inspired by the past, devoted to the present, and built to inspire a multi-generational future, Samsonite is here to elevate your journey. Travel with Samsonite and pack confidence every step of the way. Shop now at shop.samsonite.com. Samsonite.
It's kind of funny how the gears shifted on that presidential commission after people started realizing what Cody was really talking about. To me, because it smelled like, if you read Brandon Marcello's story of CBS 247 last week, I think he dove into a little bit of how it fell apart and the Big Ten and the SEC being a little wary of those stances. When you heard Nick Saban trying to downplay it, it made me wonder if the SEC brethren got to Nick Saban and said, hey, some of what you're going for makes sense, but some of what this other guy's talking about, not best for us, because we know they disagree on the who you should play, because Cody wants to be inclusive and include everybody. Nick Saban wants to include just only the Power Four and say, hey, Power Four should only play Power Four and things like that. And so Saban obviously is going to have a perspective from the SEC, from one of the most powerful conferences. And I do think that had a really big influence and pushback from Big Ten, the SEC, because again, they're going to want what's best for their leagues, not necessarily what's best for everybody.
Sam Comm with us, theathletic.com. Clark Williams, did you see his response to Sankey saying the coordinated efforts of the press releases? And just again, I texted him. I said, Clark, that kind of cracked me up a little bit. He goes, but we didn't do that. We didn't get on the phone and go 3, 2, 1, send, And I do. That means nothing in the big picture, but I do like the way at least there are at times some fireback type comments that, hey, we're not just here for you to just run all over us, even though in some cases it could appear to be that's the case.
Yeah, and that's the point I was making the last time we talked with you guys was I think the Big 12 and the ACC could stand to cooperate more on this front because their interests are similar, because neither one of them want to be railroaded by the Big 10 and the SEC, and they want to be included in the playoff. And yeah, it'd be better if they use their power more often, specifically the commissioners, not so much Clark. I think but having Clark as a voice being willing to speak, I think is good, because anybody who's willing to speak on behalf of the conferences that are not of the favorite status can help delay any consolidation of power amongst the two big ones. But yeah, I think it's important to have the diversity of perspective. I think it's funny that Greg Sankey also said that, well, he's often the one speaking about these issues. Well, that's because he's the head of one of the most powerful conferences, and seems happy to speak his mind on all of it. And I think it's disingenuous to think that he doesn't realize that he's shaping the format, or shaping the discussion, or shaping the conversation nationally with things that he says, because he absolutely is. When he says things like back in the fall, when the playoff, we hadn't even started the playoff, when we were talking about the contenders of the teams, and he was saying, well, we're going to be watching really closely what the selection committee does. Like, dude, we know what you're doing. You're sending a message that if you don't like how they pick the teams, that you're going to push for a format change. And that's exactly what's happened. They didn't like that Alabama got left out. They didn't like that they didn't get another SEC team. So here we are pushing for a format change to get more teams in.
Sam, there's some interesting comments coming out of SEC meetings right now. One of them I just saw, Joe Castiglione, the CFP selection committee's role is not to send messages, but the outcome of their decisions do. There was another quote from Scott Strickland just a second ago that basically said, and I'm trying to find it right here again, a committee is not ideal to choose a postseason. I question whether it is appropriate for college football. So that's a couple of comments in the last 15 minutes about the committee itself. What do you think the talk is going on around the meetings right now? Obviously, something to do, you would think, with the selection committee. And what do you think, if they have their way, that change would also look like? We going back to computers? I mean, what are we doing here?
You know what they want? They want to stack the committee with a bunch of former SEC and Big Ten folk, right? Let's be real. No, I do think taking subjectivity out of it, at least in some mechanism. That's why I've always been a advocate of leaving conference champions in, because there is no subjectivity about that. You win your way in. So if you had 10 conference champions in, or even if we want to stick with just the power conferences plus a group of 5, group of 6, that there's no subjectivity on that. It is you win your way in, with the exception of the one group of 5, group of 6 team is you'd have to rank the highest one. Then you have the subjectivity of the rest of them. If you want to go no subjectivity at all and all objectivity computer rankings, I think that's a slippery slope because we did that with the BCS and that had people complaining for 15 years that led us to a 14 playoff. So it's a happy medium. I don't think look, the NCAA basketball tournament has this figured out. There's 32 or 34 conference champions and the rest are at large. And guess what? We bellyache about the 69th team on Selection Sunday. Okay. So bellyaching's never going to go away about who gets left out. But when you reduce subjectivity by giving a real qualification path, then we have less of this. It doesn't dominate the conversation as much. I can promise you nobody's talking about the 69th team that got left out of the basketball tournament right now, like we're talking about Alabama getting left out of the playoff last fall or last winter, which was absurd to me that we're still talking about that. Like we're talking about a 3-loss team that got hammered by Oklahoma, that got beat by Vanderbilt. We're not talking about a team that went 11-1 and got left out. So the fact that we're still debating that, to me, speaks to the lack of refinement in the system that I think we tweak a little bit.
Also a team in the last format that got in over a 13-0 team.
Yes.
So like they have nothing to complain about.
Yeah.
Like it didn't work out for you one time and now let's burn it down. Like that is the ultimate take your ball and go home, like whiny thing about it. I also kind of caught the vibe from Sankey that he's a little tired of being the only one who takes the bullets, especially since the AQ plan is not his plan. As a matter of fact, he seems to like more the other way because he can get 5 or 6 as opposed to AQs where that chance at 5 or 6 gets reduced because now you have to give one to other team, a couple more to other teams, which he doesn't want. I think he's a little miffed at Tony Petitti for not also backing his own plan very publicly.
Tony's the genius here. He's like, he throws it out there and he's just like, lets everyone else discuss it. And the thing is whenever you see Greg Sankey somewhere, if you ask him to talk, he's happy to talk. And so that's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing in that you get to get your agenda out there and you get to set the conversation. It's a curse in that you become the whipping boy and you become the target for everybody when they don't like what you're saying. So I do think for the SEC and the Big Ten, I think going straight, no automatic qualifiers 1 through 16 would be better for them. And honestly, I think it'd be better for almost everyone. The only one that I don't think it would be great for is group of 5, group of 6. But even then, most years you're going to have one of those teams reach the top 16. So I think you're going to have multiple teams in the Big 12 in that top 16. You're going to have multiple teams in the ACC in that top 16. And you're certainly going to have, you guys ran the numbers earlier, and I saw someone posted the Big 10 and SEC numbers. If you did it that way, they're going to always get the most in if you do it that way. So I don't see a problem doing that. I would prefer something that is either simple like that or something that is a little bit objective when we talk about automatic qualifiers. I don't like the multiple automatic qualifiers, which feels like the Champions League in soccer and European soccer, which is a great event, by the way, which I'm a huge fan of, but I don't want to necessarily recreate that here. And it takes so much explanation for the fans. Like we were still explaining the playoff to the fans this year. Like, okay, well, here's why this team is in and here's why this team gets a bye. Make it simple, make it accessible for everybody.
By the way, good for you. I saw Joseph Duarte's tweet. Sports journalism workshop with staffers from the Cougar Shorts Sports and UH Coug TV. You were there among others to give back to the profession that you're a part of, and also give the younger people a chance to understand what you may have gone through and what this is all about, what you do for a living.
Yeah, I just went and sat there and talked about what not to do and had pointed to do. No, I'm kidding. No, it was. I'm not heavily involved anymore in University of Houston sports journalism program. There was a time where I was for about a decade, probably from 2012 or 2010 to 2020. It kind of went away over the years, just not for no particular reason. It's just kind of circumstantial. But Joseph Duarte, who's on the beat at University of Houston there, has had this discussion with me a few times about, hey, we should really get the people who work in the student media at University of Houston together to do a workshop with them. And I was fully on board. And so he organized that today. They had it actually up at the Houston Chronicle building today. And there was about a dozen of those students who all worked across Coug TV, the Cougar newspaper, Coug Radio. And it was really cool to get to visit with them. I always enjoy doing that. And I always say, I'm here in this business because there were people who are in the position I am in now who were helpful to me when I was at that stage. You know, when I was 22 years old and about to graduate from University of Houston, John McClain, legend at the Houston Chronicle, of course, a Baylor grad, took the time out to have lunch with me and listen to me and give me tips and advice. And there are so many more that I worked with at the Chronicle, that I worked with at ESPN, and even that I work with to this day at The Athletic, that have been gracious with their time and their help to help me advance in the industry and get better. And I think it's only right to pay it forward to the next generation to make sure that our industry is in good hands.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate your time. Go enjoy some time off, I hope. Block my number for at least a couple of weeks. We'll see you for sure in Frisco at Big 12 Media Day. Sam Kahn, The Athletic, with us on 365 Sports.